the topic this morning, the felt sense of the growing edge, came out of a discussion about this desire for something new, for a particular experience of being challenged. My seminar member actually said she wants something that will encourage her to be a better person, which is sort of interesting also, right? What a better version of me would be. And this feeling that is the felt sense of the growing edge is a feeling of just being on the verge of something new, just being on the verge of something that you both recognize in some way and you don't recognize. It's being on this border of comfort and discomfort. They say that, and I don't remember who says it, but there has been research that's shown that in the body, the feeling of excitement and anxiety is the same thing. It's about how we interpret that feeling. And so this growing edge place has a little bit of anxiety, excitement in it. It's a feeling of needing to let go into the something new. One of the psychoanalytic writers that I like very much, Donald Stern, talks about courting surprise. And I think that this seminar member wanted to court surprise in the readings that we would do together, to see what I can think that I never thought before, and to recognize, and that's the part that I think is really important for us this morning, to recognize the bodily feel of that something new coming over the horizon, so that we can welcome it, so that we can open to it. And since it has an uncertainty in it, there is, in a way, even maybe, and I'm going to ask you people, because you're going to think it through with me and feel it through and focus it through with me, there can often be a little feeling of a choice between turning away and leaning into it in the moment. And again, we're talking about a feeling in the moment, not the already thought things that we know we want to experience in order to already decided. But this is that kind of tipping point, I would call it, of embracing a thought that's going to come right over the horizon line. A thought, oh, maybe this could be possible, or maybe I could do that, or maybe this person really meant that, or maybe I could be this way, or maybe this is what I'm really disturbed about, or, oh, look at that. I never noticed that tree in that way before. What is there for me? So take a minute and see if you recognize this particular kind of felt sense of a growing edge that I'm trying to describe for you. This growing edge feeling can come when you read something, often when Dorothy reads us a poem, there'll be that feeling like, oh, I could think that, and I have to grab it. That's the thing about this felt sense. I have to grab it, hold on to it, follow it. It could be in a conversation. It could be just surprisingly just show up while I'm taking a shower or taking a walk. It could be in silence, in meditating, or in focusing pause when we're waiting for something. Let's just have a few responses of anything that comes to you about it, and then I'll go a little further in my describing it.
Something's coming for me, which there's always the critic in the background saying, is this an appropriate comment? But because there's been a lot coming for me recently that hasn't felt so good. It's been pretty painful, but it's been also growing edge. It's always, I'm very aware that it's a decision. Do I sit with this, or do I have something else to eat or watch a movie or some other activity to push it away? So it seems as though before, this might be heretical, but before I can even be with the felt sense, there needs to be a decision that I'm going to sit with, I'm going to address, I'm going to be curious about, which of course is going to change the felt sense too, but
Yes.
but that decision needs to be there, and then whatever might arise, and we can go the next steps. But without that choice point, and I think for a long time there was a category of stuff that I didn't even realize that I was relegating to hurts too much, not going to pay attention, but it wasn't a conscious decision at all.
Right.
So it's a combination to me of the attitude and maybe feeling empowered enough to know that I'm not going to melt in these feelings, and
Yes.
all of that needs to come before.
Yes. That's very helpful, Ruth. Yes. And that's what I was describing when I said this little tiny choice point.
Okay. I'm sorry. Is that? Yes.
You really brought it out there, right? Sometimes it can be a real choice, where we're thinking about it. I can do this now, and I couldn't bear it before, but now I can bear it, and there could be growth in it. And I think what Melinda was describing is sort of like that Melinda was saying, well, I can stand the conflict. And it's wonderful to see ourselves grow that way, to see that we couldn't bear something before and we can bear it now.
I think it'd be a really interesting, it's a very interesting question to ask, is what is needed to help us or to help folks get to that point?
That's right. What is needed to be able to think the unthinkable, bear the unbearable, say the unsayable?
Yeah.
And that's a question that we ask. We ask so fundamentally in psychotherapy or working with people. What can help us as facilitators to ourselves and to the partner we're working with to go to that edge of being able to stretch the comfort zone so that comfort zone can be a little broader and we can take another step, right? Sometimes that choice point of making a decision to either back away or to lean into it or to just stay there and let it come, not away. That can be so brief that we aren't even aware that we're making a choice. Sometimes in our focusing, a step will come, or a felt sense will come, or something new will come, and we won't even notice that some little thing is pulling back, but then an assurance is saying, no, speak to this, or allow this, or listen to this. Anybody else?
Yeah. Something that comes for me and all that, Ruth, you really did help me further the sensing into this something. The way I look at things a lot of times is from the practical, how could I interpret this incorrectly and create more suffering for myself? The decision point is interesting because I've noticed in myself there can be a choice point where it's a familiar old something. I'm not going to do this again. There's no like a new thing arising that it feels like I can fall into. It's like something has already carried forward enough for me to notice that I have a choice in some new kind of way. That feels interesting to me.
You may not notice it, and part of, I think, what is important about distinguishing this kind of a felt sense, and of course it will be different in every moment, different for each of us, but this kind of a felt sense is the noticing it, noticing that there's something right over over there that wants to come. And of course, focusing, this is so focusing, right? This is the heart of focusing. I want to say just a couple of things about this idea of the growing edge, the idea of an edge. There's something about an edge that's a very powerful metaphor, because in the image of an edge, there's always a little bit of an image that goes with it of over the edge, right? Is that true for you? The edge has with it this feeling of a border between a known and an unknown. And that feeling of going over the edge is a feeling of a lack of control. Now, the felt sense of the growing edge isn't a lack of control, but it's a putting down control, allowing something new to come. But it isn't the feeling of being out of control. And the edge, the metaphor of the edge, has that sense of just this line, this thin line. So Jean Genlin, when I was writing my paper for psychoanalysts about focusing and using the philosophy of the implicit in therapy, Jean encouraged me to call the paper "The Edge of Awareness," even though he had used that phrase in another paper. He liked the idea of the paper being called that, "The Edge of Awareness." And it captures just that title, "The Edge of Awareness," just what focusing offers us. The sense that we can go, and what do we mean by go, really, right? We can attend to, we can pay attention to, we can emotionally embrace an experience that is just on the borderline of what is conscious and what is non-conscious. I wouldn't say unconscious, because it's not a Freudian unconscious feeling, but not something we're not aware of. And focusing shows us how to go just to that point. And what we're exploring now is the felt sense of that point when it's a point of growth, but it actually always is, right? In a way, the edge of awareness in focusing is always has to do with our growth, with our expansion, with our deepening, with our knowing more. The psychoanalytic people talk about the difference between the leading edge and the trailing edge, and this is also in that territory. So when we're working with a client or with ourselves, the leading edge is sort of like this growing edge. It's and it's pulling us. There's a kind of pull. There's a feeling of being led, being attracted. There's an attraction, a fear and attraction there. The leading edge is bringing us to a furthering of ourselves that we haven't experienced, a development. The way that the psychoanalysts talk about the trailing edge is a pull into a primal difficulty, which Ruth, maybe you had a little bit of that in your experience, and maybe Melinda did also, of this edge of the being triggered into something that might be a childhood trauma or developmental trauma or something that grips us. And the trailing edge in focusing is also a growing edge, if you're following me. You know, if we can go to that edge and say, oh, that again, oh no, can I think about that? Is it like that? We can go there rather than running away from it. It becomes a growing edge. So the growing edge can really be sort of both sides, or maybe everything, because nothing is two, right? Nothing is binary that way. But it can be something that's leading us like, wow, I had the feeling this fall, after being startled by being back in the city after after the country peacefulness, and I said, oh, I could do anything here, was the feeling. That was a particular growing edge. I could be any kind of Lynn here. And it scared me. It scared me to death. Like, what? No, I can't. Of course, all kinds of other things came in there, but I wanted to catch that feeling. Then when other things happened and I said, oh no, I can't stand that again. That's the trailing edge. But then if I can stay, which actually came right after the forward edge, came this trailing edge feeling, and I can stay with that and be interested and curious. That will expand me and deepen me and grow me. So it's that experience of, can we call it edginess? What does it mean when you say somebody is edgy? I think it can mean a lot of things, right? Somebody is edgy. But notice that metaphor, sometimes it could mean that the person could be a little prickly, or it could mean that they're a little out there or something. But it's interesting how that metaphor of edge is so important in our language. Maybe curious if Vivian or other people who are primarily speaking another language, if the word edge has that potency.
I wanted to respond to Ruth's
Yeah.
ask what is needed to think the unthinkable. And I think you mentioned now the curiosity, but I think we also need to give ourselves some love and kindness as we go into that area that's more edgy and unsure. We need to hold a hand. It could be our own hand or put our hand on our heart.
Yes.
That kind of support to venture into that area.
Yes.
It's hard to do it without that for me.
Yes. 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 And that's actually where we need to go next, right? In this conversation. What do we need to get that, to follow that, to decide to lean into the growing edge? And Shlomo, you're saying we need first this reassurance, this hand.
Yes.
Right? We need, and that's sort of in the, maybe we could say we need the focusing attitude of openness and being with, and that hand
Yes.
assurance is in that focusing attitude of it's okay,
Yes.
be in this. In therapy, as therapists, we need to bring that feeling of we can be with this. This is okay. We're here. We can be here. And the curiosity can come next after we have that sort of reassurance.
Yes.
The pause can sometimes be that reassurance, right?
Right.
We need to pause and breathe into it. There can be a waiting in that assurance. To go into to embrace the uncertainty that is inherent to the growing edge. We need the feeling that we need the experience that we are okay, and we can embrace that uncertainty, that it can be safe, but not too safe. And in therapy, we're always looking for that experience. You know, we're as therapists, we are dedicated to finding this felt sense of the growing edge for both of us, that place that has the uncertainty in it, and the willingness to see. And the willingness can become a hunger. And I'm interested in that. What is that hunger for the new? A hunger for growth, a hunger for stretching. And it can come right into that moment of, oh, I want to see. What is that?
Well, I think the hunger is the need not to be stuck in our life, not to be frozen, to feel that we're growing, that we're moving, that there's fluidity.
Yes, yes, yes. It's the feeling of not wanting to be stuck. That's right. right, that would be more like the trailing edge. We don't want this. I don't want to, like Jonathan says, I don't want to do this again. And there's something calling to us. It's
There has,
pushing.
Lynn, I see two other hands up.
oh, yeah.
Please, Melinda, help me here.
Yeah, sure. Rosa.
Yeah, this is fascinating. Yeah, I had my hand up and I also felt the conversation kind of going in that direction. I was really curious about what Shlomit had said about the, what is needed to think the unthinkable, and the loving hand, maybe in others, maybe one's own. And so for me, what was coming was, and I loved what Lynn said about the willingness can become a hunger. So then that added this new piece to it. But I'm the metaphor for me that has been coming up for the last while is, that hunger is inside of us, right? Like that sense of, in order for us to connect with the leading edge, with the growing edge, we need to be able to feel okay with what is before we can move to the leading edge. And that sense of, focusing being a natural process, how there's this spontaneity there's a spontaneity that when we become really okay with what is, then our curiosity awakens. Like, I had a really vivid experience of that yesterday that was kind of unexpected. I was talking with my mom and telling her about something difficult that was happening, and she was trying to fix it. And I was saying, "Oh, Mom, I just want you to hear that I'm having a hard time right now." And she backed away and she got it. And then, like, the next moment, I was like, and actually, I want to really celebrate that, and it was like, it was such an incredible shift into that leading edge of, I'm in a challenging aspect of a project. And I wanted to commiserate about the challenge, but then the moment that happened, I was able to, it was very spontaneous. I wasn't trying to make myself shift, but that sense of, oh, wow. And I've taken the first step and I want to celebrate that. And there's a lot more steps to happen. And she doesn't formally know focusing, although I've shared various aspects with her, but that sense of that there is a natural hunger in us to take that next step when we feel safe enough, right? Which is what Shlomit was getting out. And then what Melinda had said about the places where we habitually veer away from our experience. Like, I'm thinking of, protective patterns in all of us where we don't go someplace because it hasn't been safe, right? And so we habitually steer ourselves away from being with what is in a certain area. And so the next step doesn't come because there's a kind of, for good reason, naturally learned protective instinct that kicks in that says, well, we're just not going to go there. So, but that too, almost like in the negative, is an example of how important it is to be with what is for the next step to be able to come, right? And the last thing here is just the interplay with experience. And what I mean by that is, I just so remember so vividly Jean's example about, I remember the felt sense of it in a vivid way. I may not be getting all of the details accurately, but you know how he talked about what happens, like the difference between the pilot's felt sense and the passenger's felt sense on an airplane ride, right? Like, as a passenger, you're on the airplane, like he's talking about small planes, right? Like just, I don't know, he may have had this experience of going up in a small plane. And there's something about that when all of a sudden the ground is approaching, as you're coming in for a landing, that for the passenger, the felt sense is like, oh my God, are we going to die, right? Whereas for the pilot who's done this a bunch of times before, their felt sense is informed by that experience, right? And so maybe their felt sense is, oh, everything is lining up perfectly. I know this is going to be a smooth landing, right? So there's a way that our felt sense of something can really shift depending on the experiences we've had, because then what's on our edge is different, and whether it's known or unknown and all of that. So yeah, anyway, that's where I went with all that stew of thoughts. Thank you so much.
Yes, Rosa. Wow. Yeah. I want to just underline that this hunger for growth is a natural process, and we can see that a number of family members and friends have grandchildren that I'm watching, and that hunger to those steps that where you could the baby could fall, but wants to walk, right? That's all in us. We have that. We don't have to will it. It's there, that hunger. And I want to also underline that the experience of cultivating the felt sense of the growing edge helps it to feel more we grow in our confidence through focusing of, oh, I can be with that. I can be with even that. The other thing I wanted to I love that sound, the puppy sound. The other thing I just wanted to underline in there is that the unwillingness, being with that and really being with it, can be a growing edge to say, okay, I'm not willing, or I'm reluctant, or whatever it is that the being with opens it up.
Yeah, there's something that Daphne Daly had mentioned to me when I was confused about some issue, of teaching, and she suggested inviting a felt sense of all of that, all of that about teaching and what it meant for me, and consciously looking for the where is my edge in all of this, and I found that helpful. It felt more proactive. I felt more like an explorer rather than just sitting back and being overwhelmed by all of that. And yeah, and something else I wanted to mention is, well, just that, of course, wherever I am, if I'm on a road, I might wish to be 1,000 miles down the road, but of course my edge is probably just maybe just a few meters or a few hundred meters down the road. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Yes, that the edge is very close, right? And the being asked, what is the felt sense of all of that? Is this wonderful encouragement and can be that assuring hand, so we can help our clients and help each other with the kinds of encouragement of, oh, what is there? And that is a hand. I remember Jean saying to a client that was repetitively struggling over the same issue again and again, and Jean saying, there's a lot we know about this, and there's a lot we don't know. It was like he was encouraging this feeling of hunger. What about what we don't know about this? And of course, we need to let ourselves and let other people say all the things that we know already that maybe we've said a million times. We need to maybe get that clear a space by getting that out. But then what do we not know that brings us to that edge? One more thing I just wanted to say about helping other people is that there are many ways that you can encourage someone that you are in a helping relationship with to go to the growing edge. But we can't get the other person there. We can only get ourselves there. And when we're the helpers, we need to get to our growing edge in that moment, in that relationship. What's the growing edge for us? And when we get ourselves, when we find that growing edge for ourselves, that curiosity, that openness, that being pulled by something, being guided in a certain way, then it often is in the relationship and in the other person, that we have to work with ourselves first. I just want to hear anything else that is there for you in response to what somebody else said, or in response to what just anything that came up for you here.
I want to say something, Abby. It feels like maybe it's kind of what was already being said, but like there is a sense of when I am afraid at the edge, a sense of spatial contraction around me. But like when the time is right and when the marination is complete, there is a natural space that opens up and like almost like a propelling force forward, kind of like a baby taking a step topple, and then the space is already there. So it's only just to be discovered rather than like a pushing. That feels like more organic and rather than forceful.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point, that this felt sense of the growing edge is not a pushing. It's organic. It arises. You know, Jean says it has to come, and we can welcome it. We can prepare for it in a sense. We can invite it, but it has to come. It's a kind of wanting that has to happen, right? That it's a wanting, it's a curiosity, it's a something just at the tip of where I can almost think it. It's an inkling. I love the word inkling. I get a kick out of it. Could somebody define inkling for me, especially for people who might not be familiar with that word in English?
The tip of an idea.
Yes, good. The tip. The tip is a good.
And yeah, and it reminds me of something else that I wanted to say about all this. I have a favorite seat in a window, in front of a beautiful window, looking into my neighbor's yard at certain trees that are just beautiful. And I spend a lot of time there looking at it. And a few days ago, I realized I'm looking at it, but looking at it as if it's out there. And something shifted in me where I wanted to look at it, bringing the essence of that into me. And it was quite a experience. It was a shift, like not just looking at it out there in passing, but bringing it in. And it reminds me of what we're talking about, really bringing something in and almost getting a bodily sense of it. Feels very different than just looking at it out there.
Yeah. Can you say the difference in, if you take it in just now, the difference in the felt sense of the just looking at it and the felt sense of taking it in?
Feeling more a part of it, like the tree is in me and I am in it. Feeling more of a part of it, a part of nature, not and I go to the beach a lot, and I think it's probably because I went to the beach that I had this experience with the tree, because I love looking at the water, the ocean, the vista, but taking it in, rather than it's just out there and I'm looking at it, like me and the earth are one, me and this world are one. I mean, it's quite a shift, right?
Yeah. And both feelings are important. We're not saying that this felt sense of the growing is the only one that we seek. The looking at it out there is this sort of relaxed right? And the taking it in, something's required. It's like an involvement and engagement in that feeling. Oh, I want to do this, be with this. There's that kind of leaning forward.
It can still feel mild and mellow. I mean, taking in that vista of the ocean and the openness there. It can still feel mellow, but it just feels more united and connected. It was very interesting.
Yes.
I just wanted to say what comes up for me is the importance of intention. But a bunch of things have to be in place for me. Like I signed up for a memoir course, and it's like, I just notice this resistance to write is so strong. And like, I do have the intention, but these different forces are at play. And I do know myself enough that I have to give myself time. Like when somebody mentioned pushing, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It just makes like pain come up if I push too hard. Whereas it's just something about a combination of intention, allowing a change of environment from my home. Now I'm in my daughter's home, and there's this big room and this big window, and I'm by the window. It's like, that's where I started writing. It's just amazing to me to like allow all the forces at play to come in.
Yes. This big allowing. And then there's also, just to come back to where we began, this large intention for our lives. I want to do this. And the intention in the moment, bringing it into that moment of experience of what we actually feel in our bodies. And I think we didn't maybe catch that as much as we maybe will breakout rooms. The feeling in the body of this experience of growing edge, the moment of it when it comes across the horizon line. So maybe we can explore that more in the breakout rooms. So I'll see you at 9:30, and have a wonderful exploration of the breakout rooms, of maybe taking a moment. Maybe we'll do that together, but taking a moment, and then we'll go into our breakout room. So maybe we'll take a couple of breaths together and let all that we've said so far just sort of settle there. This whole thing about the moment of growing edge and the tiny, sometimes unthought decision to lean into it. Challenge, risk, opportunity, curiosity, stretch, like stretching in an exercise class where you want to go right to that limit where it's not pushing and it's not, it's not going to hurt you, but it's just that little stretch of further, the furtherness feeling. Just that question of how am I with that feeling at this time in my life right now? Can I find a hunger? What is it for? And we want to have what people said, that Shlomo, what you said was such an important thing, that in your breakout room, there was the idea of finding the felt sense difference between what you call the good hunger and the bad hunger, the hunger for growth and the what I call the addictive craving, and how the felt sense is different, and the crossing points. And so we wanted to have that maybe as a topic.
Yes.
And Jana, you're talking about the container of having a job. And I wanted to say, maybe the growing edge, and of course I don't know, I'm going to ask you, see if you could find this. Could the growing edge be to do the job even if you aren't assigned it? Right?
Well, I wasn't assigned it and I did it, but sometimes I'll take on technical jobs as, well, I better do it because other people won't know how to do it or won't think of it. But that's different than what you're saying. You're talking about something that's just not my job at all.
Right, like if someone has their hand raised and I don't see it because of my poor vision, for you to say so-and-so has their hand up wouldn't be your job, but would that be like that growing edge of, oh, I can do that and will do that?
Well, I don't think that's a good example because I've done this job before of noticing people's hands up. I was going to say I had a better example, but now I can't remember it. Oh, here's the example I wanted to say. When you decided to ask me about that, you called on me. And sometimes you'll look around and you'll say, I'll bet, you know, someone has something to say about this. I'll bet Jim has something to say about this. You know, so you kind of invite me, you know, but you call it inviting, but I call it pushing. And in the 60s, we used to push people. In the 60s, we had encounter groups where we didn't wait for people to say things or think about their edge. What we did is we pushed them over the edge and we
Yeah.
confront people. And as a person who would never voluntarily go over the edge, I used to seek that out. I used to seek out places where I would be pushed.
Huh.
And, you know, or I would take a drug, for example, that would take my consciousness into places where I would not normally bring it, you know, and I might have a bad trip because that's why I didn't want to go there in the first place. But then now I was pushed there. So there's the invitation versus the push. You know, where's the line between being invited or being pushed?
Right. Yes, it's again that edge, that delicate edge between inviting and pushing, and experiencing being invited or being pushed. So you're saying that sort of helps me to pay attention when I want to invite you and say, oh, experience that pushing.
So I might just be interpreting it as a push when it's really an invitation. I might be adding that for some reason.
Well, but there isn't any adding. That's the experience.
Well, yes. Well, there's not a conscious adding, but I don't have to do that. I mean, or one way to phrase it is there's a part of me that would take it as an invitation, but I'm going to go with the part of me that takes it as a push.
That could be that little choice point.
Right. And I think maybe taking it as an invitation feels more threatening, actually. A push, which you might think of as more threatening, is, well, it's not my responsibility. I got pushed.
And these are all little aspects of that moment. Of
Yeah.
this or won't I, and all the subtleties of that feeling of a step.
I'm hearing little child. I'm being pushed, right?
Well, if you're on a swing as a little child, you want to be pushed.
Right. And sometimes we need to be encouraged and pushed, right?
I also hear that the risk is, different. That it's less risk for you to be pushed and invited. And for me it's the opposite. So it's like the risk is different for each of us.
Yes.
We were talking with Rosa about trying to translate growing edge, and when I tried to translate it, I came to understanding better that there is something organic about it. For me, in the way I see growing edge. So, and then it feels more like an invitation. But
Yes.
yeah, it's interesting what also Jim is bringing up here.
Yes. And so interesting how we're all different, and we're different in different moments too.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm fascinated with the conversation about push. I've been working for the last 2 years on a long-term consulting basis with my brother and his company, where they see push as a really good thing. And it was really shocking and jarring for me at first, because I saw push as a very negative thing. And I think that there's all kinds of sides to it, but I'm realizing that we are close to the end or over the end of time. And I just want to suggest that topic, to me, it kind of fits in a little bit with the good hunger, bad hunger, but maybe it's a different one, but it just seems like a really rich topic that would be worth delving into more at another time.
Yes, well, we should write that down as something to come back to, the edge of pushing and inviting, or feeling pushed and feeling invited.
Well, because, life gives us a lot of circumstances where we feel pushed, right? I mean, there's a lot of circumstances in which we don't have a lot of choice, but we still have the choice of how we respond.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. So, Dorothy, I think we're ready for our poem. We went over a little bit here this morning. Sorry, people.
Okay, this is a poem that Lynn shared with me. Lovely poem. A certain day became a presence to me. There it was, confronting me. A sky, air, light, a being. And before it started to descend from the height of noon, it leaned over and struck my shoulder, as if with the flat of a sword, granting me honor and a task. The day's blow rang out, metallic, or was I, or it was I. A bell awakened, and what I heard was my whole self saying and singing what I knew. I can.